The ship called Celestial Harmony dropped through the clouds of a frozen world. Inside the ship, 4 different alien species worked together. They had come to study ancient ruins buried under ice on a planet called Corvith-9. Nobody expected trouble. The mission was supposed to be easy. Commander Kelvosh stood at the front of the shuttle. Kelvosh was a Volari, a being made of living crystal. Light moved through their body, like blood moves through flesh. When Kelvosh spoke, colors rippled across their surface. They had lived for 300 years and had seen many worlds. This frozen planet did not worry them. Next to the commander sat Crixtal, a Tharn engineer. The Tharn were large creatures with hard shells covering their bodies, like insects but the size of bears. Crixtal came from a world of endless rain and warm jungles. They had never felt true cold in their entire life. The very idea of ice seemed strange to them, like a story from a dream. In the back of the shuttle, 2 Silith scientists checked their equipment. The Silith looked like great serpents with many arms. They breathed special gases and wore suits that kept them alive. Their home world was warm and thick with clouds. They moved slowly and spoke even slower, thinking carefully about every word. And then there was Marcus Cole. Marcus was human. He was the only human on the ship. The aliens called his species young and new. Humans had only been traveling between stars for 200 years. The other species had been doing it for thousands. To them, humans were like children just learning to walk. Marcus worked as a survival systems engineer. His job was to make sure the crew could live through emergencies. The aliens thought this job was not very important. They had technology that could do almost anything. They had suits that kept them warm, machines that made food, and shields that protected them from danger. What could go wrong? Marcus looked out the window at the white world below. Snow covered everything. Mountains of ice rose toward the gray sky. Wind pushed clouds of frost across endless plains. Something deep inside Marcus stirred. It was a feeling he could not name. Something old and quiet that lived in his bones. His grandmother had told him stories when he was small. She spoke of the ice ages, when great sheets of frozen water covered the earth. She told him how his ancestors had survived when most creatures died. They had learned to read the sky. They had learned to fear the cold. That fear had kept them alive. Marcus watched the clouds outside the shuttle. They were moving fast, too fast. The color of the sky was wrong. He had seen skies like this before, in pictures from Earth's polar regions. His grandmother had shown him. "Commander," Marcus said. His voice was calm but serious. "I think we should delay the landing." Kelvosh turned to look at the human. Colors of mild annoyance moved through their crystal body. "The weather is within acceptable limits. Our instruments show no danger." "The clouds are gathering too quickly," Marcus said. "The pressure is dropping. I think a storm is coming." "Our sensors do not indicate any significant weather event," Kelvosh replied. "We will proceed." Marcus wanted to argue, but he knew it would do no good. The aliens trusted their machines. They did not understand that some things could not be measured by instruments. Some things had to be felt. The shuttle dropped lower. The ruins were close now, just a few kilometers away. Everyone was excited to see what secrets the ancient structures held. Nobody noticed that the wind was growing stronger. Then the engine made a sound like breaking glass. The shuttle shook hard. Warning lights flashed red. Crixtal shouted something in their clicking language as they fought with the controls. The ship was falling, spinning completely out of control. "Magnetic field disruption," Crixtal announced. "The engines are failing. I cannot stop it." They crashed. Marcus felt the impact through his whole body. Metal screamed and bent around them. The world turned upside down, then right side up, then upside down again. When everything finally stopped moving, Marcus found himself hanging from his safety harness. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead. He released the harness and dropped to what used to be the ceiling. All around him, his crewmates were groaning and trying to free themselves. The shuttle was destroyed. Smoke filled the air. Through a crack in the hull, Marcus could see snow blowing sideways. "Status report," Commander Kelvosh ordered. Their voice was weak but steady. "Multiple injuries, none critical," one of the Silith said. "The shuttle is not functional. We cannot fly. Our location is 12 kilometers from the ruins," Crixtel added. "The distress beacon is active. Rescue ships will arrive in approximately 72 hours. 72 hours. 3 days. The aliens seemed to relax when they heard this number. 3 days was nothing. They would wait inside the shuttle, use their suits and emergency supplies, and everything would be fine. But Marcus had climbed out through the broken hull. He stood in the snow, feeling the wind bite at his exposed skin. He looked at the sky, and his heart went cold. The clouds were black now, rolling across the horizon like a wave of darkness. The wind was screaming. Snow was beginning to fall, thick and fast. This was not ordinary weather. This was something ancient and terrible, a storm that could swallow the world. Marcus had seen recordings of such storms. On Earth, they called them blizzards. In the old times, they killed entire villages. People froze to death just steps from their own doors. Unable to see through the white wall of snow, he climbed back into the shuttle. His crewmates were still checking equipment and treating minor wounds. They did not understand what was coming. How could they? Their species had never known such cold. They had never needed to fear the sky. "Commander," Marcus said. His voice was different now, harder and more urgent. "We need to leave the shuttle. We need to find shelter. Right now." Kelvosh looked at him with confusion. "The shuttle provides adequate shelter. Our suits will maintain temperature." "No," Marcus said. "They will not. What is coming will kill us if we stay here. This shuttle is too exposed. The wind will tear it apart. The cold will be worse than anything your suits can handle." "How can you know this?" Crixtel asked. "Our instruments show nothing unusual." Marcus pointed at the sky through the crack in the hull. The aliens looked and saw only clouds and snow. They did not understand what they were seeing. "Because my ancestors survived this," Marcus said quietly. "For 100,000 years, my people lived through storms like this. It is written in my blood. I know what death looks like when it comes wrapped in white." He looked at each of his crewmates, these ancient beings from ancient civilizations. They had lived among the stars, while his people were still learning to make fire. But right now, in this moment, they were helpless. And he was not. "Trust me," Marcus said. "Please. Or we all die here." The wind howled outside like a hungry animal. The temperature was already dropping. And in the distance, the wall of white death moved closer with every passing second. The storm hit them like a fist from an angry god. One moment they were gathering supplies from the broken shuttle. The next moment, the world disappeared. Snow came down so thick that Marcus could not see his own hand in front of his face. The wind screamed at 200 kilometers per hour, pushing him sideways, trying to throw him to the ground. The cold came with the wind. It was not like anything the aliens had ever felt. This was not simple low temperature. This was cold that reached inside the body and grabbed the heart. This was cold that turned breath to ice before it left the mouth. This was cold that killed. Commander Kelvosh was the first to suffer. The Valari were creatures of light and crystal. Their bodies needed warmth to function. Not much, but more than this frozen hell could provide. The commander's crystalline form began to crack. Small lines appeared across their surface, spreading like webs. The light inside them flickered and dimmed. I cannot. I cannot move properly, Kelvosh said. Their voice was breaking up, like a radio losing signal. My systems are failing. Krikstal tried to help the commander, but found that they could not move either. The Tharn came from a world where the temperature never dropped below 30 degrees. Their bodies were designed for heat and moisture. In this terrible cold, their joints were freezing solid. The fluid inside their shells was turning thick and slow. My legs, Krikstal said with growing panic. I cannot feel my legs. The two Silith were even worse. Their breathing suits were not made for this level of cold. Ice was forming over the membranes that let them take in air. They were suffocating, drowning in frozen gas. One of them, the scientist called Teshra, collapsed into the snow and did not get up. Marcus watched his crewmates dying around him. These were beings from civilizations thousands of years old. They had ships that could cross galaxies. They had weapons that could destroy planets. They had machines that could do things humans could only dream about. And they were helpless. Completely, totally helpless. The cold did not care about technology. The cold did not care about age or wisdom or power. The cold only wanted one thing: to take the heat from living bodies and leave behind frozen meat. But Marcus was different. The cold hurt him too. Make no mistake. His fingers burned with it. His face felt like it was being stabbed with 1,000 tiny needles. His lungs ached with every breath. But he could still move. He could still think. He could still fight. This was his inheritance. For 100,000 years, his ancestors had faced winters that would have killed any other creature on Earth. They had learned to survive when survival seemed impossible. That knowledge was not in books or machines. It was written into every cell of his body, passed down through countless generations of stubborn, desperate survivors. Marcus felt something rise up inside him. It was not fear, though fear was there too. It was something older and stronger. It was the voice of all his ancestors, all the men and women who had faced the cold and refused to die. They spoke to him now, not in words, but in feelings, in instincts, in the certain knowledge of what had to be done. He grabbed Thisra, the fallen Silith, and pulled her out of the snow. She was still breathing, barely. He threw her arm over his shoulder and began to drag her forward. "Everyone follow me," Marcus shouted over the wind. "Stay close. Do not stop moving. If you fall, you die." "Where are we going?" Krikstal asked. The Tharn's voice was weak and scared. "Shelter," Marcus said. "There has to be rock somewhere. A cliff, a hill, anything that can block the wind. We need to get out of this open ground." He started walking, dragging Thisra with him. His legs sank deep into the snow with every step. The wind tried to push him back, but he leaned into it and kept going. Behind him, he heard the others struggling to follow. Kelvosh was crackling with every movement, their crystal body breaking apart piece by piece. Krikstal moved like a machine running out of power, slow and jerky. The other Silith, Ventress, was barely conscious, sliding through the snow like a dying snake. Marcus did not know if they would make it. He did not know if shelter existed anywhere nearby. All he knew was that staying still meant death. Moving meant a chance. Even a small chance was better than none. The snow blinded him. He could see nothing but white in every direction. He navigated by feeling alone, searching for any change in the ground, any rise in the land that might mean rocks or cliffs. Time lost all meaning. There was only the next step, then the next, then the next. His body screamed at him to stop, to rest, to give up. He ignored it. His ancestors had ignored worse. Krikstal fell. Marcus turned back and found the Tharn lying face down in the snow. Ice was forming on their shell. Their eyes were closed. "Get up," Marcus said. He put Thisra down and grabbed Krikstal with both hands. "Get up now." I cannot, Crystal whispered. Leave me. Save the others. No. Marcus pulled harder. My people have a saying. We do not leave anyone behind. Now get up, or I will drag you the rest of the way. He did not know where he found the strength. Maybe it came from the same place as everything else. That deep well of human stubbornness that had kept his species alive through every disaster the universe could throw at them. He pulled Crystal to their feet and pushed them forward. Keep moving, Marcus ordered. All of you, keep moving. The moment you stop, you die. Your muscles make heat when they work. Use that heat. Fight for every degree. They stumbled on through the white hell. Commander Kelvash was making sounds that might have been prayers in their language. The Silith were silent, saving every bit of energy for the simple act of staying alive, and then Marcus felt it. Under his feet, the ground changed. Snow gave way to rock. He looked up and saw, through the sheets of falling white, the dark shadow of a cliff face. Hope. For the first time since the storm began, Marcus felt hope. This way, he called to the others. There is rock here. We can build shelter. He led them to the base of the cliff, where the wind was slightly less murderous. There was a depression in the rock, a natural hollow where the stone curved inward. It was not much protection, but it was something. Marcus helped each of his crewmates into the hollow. They collapsed against each other, shaking and weak. Their suits were covered in ice. Their bodies were failing, but they were still alive. Rest here, Marcus said. I am going to build us something better. Kelvash looked up at him with fading light. How? There is nothing here. No materials, no tools. Marcus looked out at the endless snow. His ancestors had faced exactly this problem. They had found an answer. There is plenty of material, Marcus said with a grim smile. Snow makes excellent walls if you know how to use it. And I know how. He turned and walked back into the storm. The wind screamed at him like a living enemy. The cold wrapped around him like chains of ice. But Marcus Cole kept moving, kept fighting, kept refusing to die, because that was what humans did. That was what humans had always done. The cold could not break him. Nothing could break him. He was the child of Ice Age survivors, and he would be damned before he let a simple storm win. Marcus worked like a machine that could not stop. He found a spot where the snow had piled deep against the cliff. The wind had packed it tight over many years, making it hard and solid. This was good. Hard snow could be shaped. Hard snow could become walls. He had no proper tools. The emergency kit from the shuttle had a small shovel meant for digging out stuck vehicles. It was not designed for this. Marcus did not care. He used it anyway. He began to dig. The work was brutal. Every swing of the shovel sent pain through his tired muscles. The cold made his fingers stiff and clumsy. Snow got inside his suit, melting against his skin, then freezing again. But Marcus kept digging. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory, telling stories of the old times when humans lived in houses made of snow and ice. The snow itself keeps you warm, she had said. It traps the air inside it, and air does not let heat escape. Your enemies become your friends when you know how to use them. Marcus dug a tunnel into the snowbank, angling it upward. Cold air sinks and warm air rises. If the entrance was lower than the living space, the warm air would stay inside. Simple physics. Simple survival. Behind him, his crewmates watched from the hollow in the cliff. They were too weak to help, too cold to move. But they watched the human with growing amazement. None of them understood what he was doing. None of them had ever seen anything like it. What is he building? Crystal asked. The Tharn's voice was a broken whisper. I do not know, Commander Kelvash answered. Cracks covered their crystal body now, a web of damage spreading with every passing minute. But he seems very certain. Marcus finished the tunnel and began hollowing out a space behind it. He carved the snow carefully, shaping it into a dome. The dome shape was important. It was the strongest shape, the shape that could hold the most weight without collapsing. His ancestors had known this long before they understood the mathematics behind it. The work took over an hour. By the time Marcus finished, his hands were numb and his body shook with exhaustion. But the shelter was complete. It was not beautiful. It was not comfortable, but it would keep them alive. He crawled back out through the tunnel and went to his crewmates. They looked terrible. Kalvosh was barely glowing anymore. Krikstal's shell had turned white with frost. The two Silith lay tangled together, their breathing so slow it was hard to tell if they were still alive. "Everyone inside," Marcus said. "One at a time. Follow the tunnel. Go up at the end. There is a space waiting for you." Moving them was like moving statues. The aliens could barely control their bodies anymore. Marcus had to guide each one through the tunnel, pushing and pulling and encouraging. Krikstal got stuck halfway through because their shell was so big. Marcus had to widen the tunnel while the Tharn waited, freezing more with every second. Finally, they were all inside. The shelter was cramped with 5 bodies pressed together. There was barely room to move. But the wind could not reach them here. The screaming storm was now just a distant sound, muffled by walls of packed snow. "It is warmer," Ventress said with surprise. The Silith's voice was weak but wondering. "How is it warmer?" "The snow keeps the heat in," Marcus explained. He was arranging their bodies, positioning them close together. "And we make heat just by being alive. Our bodies are machines that produce warmth. In here, that warmth has nowhere to go." This is remarkable," Kalvosh said. The commander's light was steadying, growing slightly brighter. "You built a structure from frozen water that protects us from frozen water." "Humans have been doing this for thousands of years," Marcus said. "Maybe longer. We call them snow caves or igloos if they are more carefully made. When you cannot escape the cold, you use the cold. That is how we survived." He was not done yet. The shelter would keep them from freezing immediately, but they needed more. They needed heat. Real heat. Enough to push back the killing cold and give their bodies a chance to recover. Marcus looked at what he had to work with. Emergency supplies from the shuttle. Damaged equipment. Chemical compounds meant for other purposes. His mind worked through the possibilities, searching for a solution. Fire. He needed fire. The aliens had never used fire. Their technologies had moved beyond it millions of years ago. To them, burning things for heat was primitive and strange, like rubbing sticks together when you have a power plant nearby. But their advanced technology was broken or useless in this cold. Fire was not broken. Fire was eternal. Marcus found power cells from damaged equipment. They were meant for running machines, but they contained energy. Energy could become heat. He stripped wires from broken devices and connected them carefully. A short circuit would release the energy all at once. As heat and light. It was dangerous. Done wrong, it could explode. But done right, it would give them warmth. He also found chemical heating packs in the emergency kit. They were designed for treating cold injuries, not for heating shelters. But Marcus did not care what they were designed for. He cared about what they could do. He arranged everything in the center of the shelter. The aliens watched him with confusion. They did not understand what he was doing, but they had learned to trust him. This strange young human seemed to know things that their ancient civilizations had forgotten or never learned. "When I start this," Marcus said, "it will make heat and light. Do not be afraid. Fire is not your enemy. Fire is the oldest friend of humanity." "Fire?" Krikstal repeated the word with something like fear. On the Tharn's home world, fire meant death. It meant forests burning, homes destroyed, lives lost. You are going to make fire inside this small space? A small fire, Marcus said. Controlled, safe, just enough to warm us. He took a deep breath and touched the wires together. Sparks flew. Then came light, beautiful orange light that pushed back the endless white and gray. Heat bloomed from the center of the shelter, gentle at first, then stronger. The chemical packs added their warmth. The power cells hummed as they released their energy slowly, carefully, exactly as Marcus had planned. The aliens stared at the fire like children seeing the stars for the first time. For Commander Kelvash, this was beyond understanding. Their species communicated through light, but this light was different. This light was wild and alive, dancing and moving in ways that seemed almost conscious. The heat touched their cracking crystal body and stopped the damage from spreading. Warmth, real warmth, for the first time since the storm began. Krikstal moved their frozen limbs closer to the flames. The ice on their shell began to melt. The fluid in their joints warmed and flowed again. They could move. They could feel. The terror of the cold began to fade. The two Silith pressed together near the heat source. Their breathing membranes were thawing. Air was flowing again. Thishra opened her eyes for the first time in hours and saw the flickering light. "What is this?" She whispered. "This is fire," Marcus said. He sat back against the snow wall, exhausted but satisfied. "This is how my people survived the long winters. This is how we became who we are." He looked at his crewmates, these beings from ancient star-spanning civilizations. They had machines that could move faster than light. They had weapons that could crack planets. They had knowledge gathered over millions of years, but they had never learned to make fire. And in this moment, in this frozen hole in the snow while death howled outside, that single simple skill was worth more than all their technology combined. "Stay close to the heat," Marcus said. "I will keep it burning through the night. Sleep if you can. We have a long wait ahead of us." The aliens huddled around the fire like travelers finding an inn in a dark forest. The human watched over them, adding fuel when needed, keeping the flame alive. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside the snow cave, there was warmth and light and hope, because one human refused to let the cold win. The fire burned through the long hours of the storm. Marcus did not sleep. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of his crewmates, frozen and dead. So he kept his eyes open and kept working. The aliens drifted in and out of consciousness. Their bodies were fighting to survive, using all their energy to repair the damage from the cold. This was good. Sleep was when bodies healed themselves. Marcus made sure they stayed warm enough to keep healing. He fed the fire constantly. The power cells were running low, so he had to be careful. Too much fuel, and they would run out before the storm ended. Too little, and the cold would creep back in. Finding the balance was like walking on a thin rope over a deep hole. When the fire was not enough, Marcus used his own body. He lay between the coldest aliens and gave them his warmth. Human bodies ran hot compared to most species. His normal temperature was like a fever for Kelvash and barely cool enough for the Silith. But in this frozen hell, his warmth was a gift they desperately needed. "You should rest," Krikstal said during one of their waking moments. "You have been working for hours. You will damage yourself." "I will rest when you are all safe," Marcus answered. "Right now, my job is keeping everyone alive." Krikstal was quiet for a moment. In the flickering light of the fire, their compound eyes reflected orange and gold. "On my world," they said slowly, "we have stories of ancient heroes. Beings who gave everything for their people, who fought impossible enemies and never gave up. I always thought these stories were exaggerations. I thought real beings were not capable of such things." Marcus smiled tiredly. Every species has those stories. We call them legends. Yes, Crystal said. But I am beginning to think that for humans, these are not legends. For humans, these are just history. Hours passed. The storm outside showed no sign of stopping. Marcus checked the entrance tunnel regularly, making sure it was not getting blocked by snow. If they were buried completely, they would run out of air. Another problem to manage, another task to add to the endless list. He melted snow for water and made sure everyone drank. Dehydration was a killer almost as dangerous as cold. The body needed water to function, to heal, to survive. The aliens did not want to drink it first. They did not understand why it mattered. Marcus insisted until they obeyed. He heated food from the emergency rations. Different foods for different species, carefully prepared according to what each biology needed. The Silith required special proteins. The Tharn needed certain minerals. The Valari absorbed nutrients through light, so Marcus angled the fire to shine on Kelvosh's body while they rested. Every detail mattered. Every small thing could mean the difference between life and death. This was survival at its most basic level, and Marcus knew every rule by heart. Thesra woke fully for the first time since the crash. The Silith scientist looked around the snow cave with wonder in her large eyes. She saw the fire, the careful arrangement of bodies, the human who sat watch over them all. How long? She asked. About 18 hours since the storm hit, Marcus said. Maybe more. It is hard to tell without proper instruments. And you have been awake this whole time? Someone has to keep watch. Thesra tried to sit up, but found she was still too weak. She settled back against Ventress, her fellow Silith, and studied Marcus with new attention. I have worked with humans before, she said. I thought I understood your species. We consider you young and impulsive, brave but foolish, quick to act, slow to think. Many species think that about us, Marcus said without offense. I was wrong, Thesra continued. This is not impulsive. This is not foolish. What you are doing requires wisdom that takes ages to develop, patience that most species never learn. How does such a young species know such old knowledge? Marcus thought about the question. How could he explain generations of winter survival to a being who had never felt cold before yesterday? How could he describe the long chain of ancestors who had passed down this knowledge, not through books or databases, but through blood and bone and instinct? We learned fast, he said finally. We had to. Our world was cruel, and it changed constantly. Ice ages came and went. Climate shifted. Food sources disappeared. Other species died when conditions changed. Humans adapted. We learned to survive anywhere, in any conditions, no matter what the universe threw at us. But this knowledge, Thesra pressed, you did not learn it in school. I can see that. It comes from somewhere deeper. My grandmother, Marcus said. The word felt warm in his mouth, despite the cold all around them. She grew up in the far north of our planet, where winters lasted most of the year. She taught me things that no school would think to teach. How to read the weather by looking at clouds. How to find shelter in open land. How to stay warm when warmth seems impossible. He smiled at the memory. She always said that modern humans had forgotten too much. We had machines to do everything for us, so we stopped learning how to do things ourselves. She made sure I never forgot. She sounds wise, Thesra said. She was. She died when I was young, but her lessons stayed with me. I think they saved all our lives today. The fire crackled and popped. Outside, the wind still screamed, but it seemed somehow less angry now. Or maybe Marcus was just getting used to it. Kelvosh stirred and opened their crystalline eyes. Light moved through their body again, weak but present. The cracks in their form had stopped spreading, and some seemed to be healing as their internal systems slowly recovered. "Dr. Cole," the commander said, "I owe you an apology." Marcus looked up in surprise. "For what?" "When you warned us about the storm, I did not listen. I trusted our instruments instead of your instincts. That was a mistake that nearly killed us all." "You could not have known," Marcus said. "Your instruments are designed for what they know. They have never measured a storm like this because your people have never lived through one." "That is precisely my point," Kelvosh said. "The Valari have traveled the stars for 10,000 years. We have collected knowledge from thousands of worlds. We consider ourselves wise and advanced, but we have no wisdom for this. No knowledge, no experience, no understanding. When the cold came, we were as helpless as newborn creatures." The commander's light pulsed with something that might have been shame. "And you, a member of a species we have always considered primitive and young, you saved us. With techniques so basic they seem almost ridiculous. Digging holes in snow, burning chemical compounds for heat, arranging bodies for warmth. Basic is not the same as useless," Marcus said gently. "No," Kelvosh agreed. "It is not. I am beginning to understand why humans have spread so quickly through the galaxy. It is not your technology. It is not your intelligence. It is this ability to survive anything, to adapt to any situation, to refuse to die even when death seems certain." Marcus did not know what to say. He had never thought of himself as special. He was just doing what humans had always done. Fighting, surviving, protecting the people around him. "Get some more rest," he said finally. "The storm will end eventually, and we need to be ready when it does." Kelvosh closed their eyes again. The other aliens settled back into their healing sleep. Marcus alone remained awake, watching the fire, listening to the wind, counting the hours until dawn. 20-4 hours since the storm began. Maybe 30 more until rescue arrived. A long time still. A dangerous time, but Marcus had fuel for the fire. He had water from melted snow. He had food for his crewmates and strength left in his body. He would make it through. They all would die because giving up was not something humans knew how to do. 31 hours after it began, the storm finally died. Marcus noticed the change slowly. First, the screaming of the wind became a whisper. Then the whisper became silence. Then, for the first time in what felt like forever, he heard something other than the endless roar of moving snow. He crawled through the tunnel and emerged into a transformed world. The sky was clearing, gray clouds pulling apart to reveal pale sunlight. The snow had stopped falling. Everything was covered in white, smooth and clean, as if the storm had erased the old world and created a new one. Marcus stood in the snow and breathed deep. The air was still cold enough to hurt, but it was nothing compared to what they had survived. He looked at his hands, red and raw from work, and felt a deep satisfaction. They had made it. Behind him, he heard movement in the tunnel. Crickstal emerged first, their shell still bearing the white marks of frost, but their movement stronger now. The Thorn looked around at the frozen landscape with new eyes. "I have never seen anything so beautiful," Crickstal said quietly. "Or so terrible." The others followed. Ventress and Thesra slithered out together, their breathing steady and strong. Commander Kelvosh came last, moving carefully, their crystal bodies still cracked but glowing with steady light. They stood together in the snow, 5 survivors of a storm that should have killed them all. For a long moment, nobody spoke. There were no words big enough for what they were feeling. "The rescue shuttle," Thesra said finally. "How long until it arrives?" Marcus checked his suit's communication system. It was damaged, but still working enough to receive signals. 6 hours, maybe less. They are moving fast. Then we wait, Kelvosh said. We have survived this long. We can survive a few more hours. But Marcus was already moving. He walked a short distance from the shelter, found a clear spot, and began packing snow into a shape. The others watched with confusion. What are you doing now? Crystal asked. Making a signal, Marcus said. The shuttle needs to find us. White snow, white suits, we will be hard to see from above. I am making something they cannot miss. He worked quickly, packing snow into a large arrow pointing at their location. Then he found dark material from the shuttle wreckage and arranged it on top of the arrow. Dark against white. Visible from space. When he finished, he walked back to the group and finally allowed himself to sit down. His body ached in ways he had not known were possible. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. But he was smiling. You have not rested at all, Kelvosh said. In 31 hours you have not slept for even a moment. I will sleep on the shuttle, Marcus said. Right now, I want to see the sun. They sat together in the snow, watching the light grow stronger as the clouds continued to clear. The frozen world around them sparkled like diamonds in the sunlight. It was beautiful, in a deadly sort of way. Dr. Cole, Kelvosh said slowly, I must ask you something. And I need you to answer honestly. Of course. Are all humans like you? Marcus laughed. It was a tired sound, but genuine. Like me how? Like this. Kelvosh gestured at the shelter, the signal arrow, the 5 living beings who should have been 5 frozen corpses. This refusal to die. This ability to find solutions where none seemed to exist. This endless, stubborn insistence on survival. Marcus thought about the question. He thought about his grandmother, who had survived poverty and cold and hardship. He thought about his father, who had worked 3 jobs to keep his family fed. He thought about all the humans throughout history who had faced impossible odds and somehow come through. Yes, he said finally. Every single human is descended from people who survived things that should have killed them. Ice ages, plagues, famines, wars. Our entire species is made of survivors. That is who we are. That is what we do. I think I understand now, Ventress said. The Silith's voice was thoughtful. Other species evolve to fit their environment. If the environment becomes hostile, they die. But humans evolve to fight the environment. To change it, to conquer it, to refuse its power over you. We had no choice, Marcus said. Our world changed constantly. If we had waited for evolution to catch up, we would have died. So we learned to adapt on our own. We learned to survive through will and intelligence instead of biology. It is terrifying, Crystal said quietly, and inspiring, both at the same time. The hours passed slowly as they waited for rescue. Marcus dozed sometimes, brief moments of rest that his body demanded despite his resistance. The aliens watched over him while he slept, returning in small measure the care he had given them. When the shuttle finally appeared in the sky, it was the most beautiful thing any of them had ever seen. It descended through the clearing clouds, engines glowing, and settled gently on the snow nearby. Medical teams rushed out, surrounding the survivors, checking vital signs and preparing for transport. The medical officer in charge, another Valari, approached Marcus with concern in their crystalline eyes. Dr. Cole, you have significant exposure damage. Multiple frostbite areas, severe exhaustion, possible hypothermia. How are you still standing? Marcus smiled weakly. Stubborn, I guess. Commander Kelvosh stepped forward. This human saved all our lives, they said firmly. Multiple times. Without his knowledge and dedication, we would be dead. The medical officer looked at Marcus with new respect. The reports were not exaggerated then. We had heard about what you did. It seemed unlikely. What did the reports say? Marcus asked. That a single human dug a shelter from snow, created fire from damaged equipment, and kept 4 alien crew members alive through a storm that should have killed all of you. The medical officer paused. It sounded like fiction. It is not fiction, Crystal said. I watched him do it. He did not stop moving for over 30 hours. He gave us his warmth when ours was failing. He fed us, protected us, refused to let us die even when we had given up on ourselves. They helped Marcus onto the shuttle. He was so tired now that his legs barely worked. But he did not mind. His job was done. His crew was safe. He could finally rest out as the shuttle lifted off. Marcus looked down at the frozen world below. He saw the snow cave they had lived in, the signal arrow he had built, the wreckage of their crashed ship. Soon they would be nothing but white bumps in an endless white landscape, invisible and forgotten. But he would remember. He would remember the screaming wind and the killing cold. He would remember the faces of his crewmates as they learned what survival really meant. He would remember the fire, that ancient friend of humanity, burning bright in a shelter made of ice. Thesra settled into the seat next to him. The Silith reached out with one of her many hands and gently touched his shoulder. Thank you, she said simply. Marcus nodded. You are welcome. When we return to our worlds, Thesra continued, we will tell others what happened here. We will tell them about the human who saved us, who dug shelter from snow and made fire from nothing and refused to let winter win. It was not special, Marcus said. Any human would have done the same. Thesra's large eyes studied him. Yes, she said softly. I believe that is true. And that is what makes it so remarkable. The shuttle carried them away from the frozen planet, up through the atmosphere, toward the waiting stars. Behind them, the snow began to fill in their footprints, erasing any sign that they had ever been there. But somewhere in the databases of 4 different alien civilizations, a new entry would soon appear. It would talk about the storm of Corvith 9, about the crash and the survival and the rescue. It would describe a snow cave and a makeshift fire and 31 hours of impossible endurance done, and at the center of the story, it would describe a human, not the strongest species in the galaxy, not the smartest, not the oldest, not the most advanced, just a young race from a small blue planet, still learning their place among the stars. But when winter came, when the cold reached out to claim them all, it was the human who stood up and said no. It was the human who fought back with bare hands and ancient knowledge. It was the human who kept the fire burning through the long night. Winter was patient. Winter was relentless. Winter had killed countless species across countless worlds, but humanity had looked into that frozen void and refused to blink. They had answered cold with fire, death with stubbornness, despair with hope, and in the end, as always, humanity endured, because that was what humans did. That was what humans had always done, and that was what humans would always do, for as long as there were stars in the sky and challenges to overcome. The cold could not break them. Nothing could break them. They were human, and they would never stop surviving.